Field 105. The First Greek Philosophers. Section 1. Introduction. In this study, you will learn about the lives and beliefs of the first Greek philosophers, also known as the Marcian philosophers. These philosophers are Thales, Anaximander, and Anaximenes. These early Greek thinkers were curious about and impressed by the fact of change, birth and growth, death and decay, and so on within the universe. So they believed that there should be something permanent in spite of all the change and transition they observe around them. This is to say that these philosophers try to explain the origin of all things by looking for something which is primary to this process of change. What then do we hope to achieve through our discussion on the first Greek philosophers? Learning outcomes for Unit 1. When you have studied this section, you should be able to describe the first Greek philosophers' notion of primary substance printed in bold SAQ 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. State the primary concern of the first Greek philosophers. State why Anaximander and Anaximenes disagree with Thales. 1. The first Greek philosophers, Thales, Anaximander, and Anaximenes. Thales. Thales was a native of Miletus in Asia Minor, a flourishing commercial city, and lived between 624 and 547 BC. He had a practical mind because he distanced himself from mythologies and questioned most of the mythological explanations that were popular in his days. He is said to have mastered the mathematical and astronomical knowledge, which gave him the opportunity to solve a number of engineering problems for the military and invent navigational instruments and techniques. But some historians of philosophy believe that Thales learned his knowledge of mathematics and astronomy from some gifted Egyptians and Babylonians. These historians make this claim because Miletus had some cultural relations with Egypt and Babylon at the time. Thales is said to have introduced the science of geometry to the Greeks, which was the result of the economic relations between Egypt and Greek mercenaries during the 6th and 7th century. It must be added that during these centuries, the first Greek settlement in Egypt was occupied by a Milesian garrison, which allowed the Egyptians and the Greeks to interact freely on many issues. It was not Thales' mathematical and technological achievement that earned him place as the first Greek philosophers, but his quest for the ultimate nature of all things. The unity that underlies all the multiplicity of things in our experience. It is important to note that the first Greek philosophers were mainly concerned with deciding what the primary element of all things is. Thales was therefore the first Greek to search for the primary substance from which all things are derived. According to Thales, the source of all things that exist is water. In other words, he believed that water is the primary substance or element of all things that exist. 1. It is generally believed that water is one of the most important nutrients in life, as no human being or living thing can survive without water. Now, Thales is of the view that water is the primary source from which all things were made. Do you think it is the essentiality of water to life that made Thales conclude that water is the primary constituent of reality? Apart from the fact of water essentiality to life, Thales by preoccupation was a sailor, so he spent most of his life navigating the waters. It is probably due to this reason that he concluded that water is a primal existence, especially as most parts of the Earth's geography is occupied by water. At first, the position of Thales concerning the ultimate source of all things may appear naive and improbable. However, Thales probably came to the conclusion that water is the source of all things because water is essential to life. Additional reasons may have occurred to Thales to support his conclusion that water is a fundamental element of all things. For example, liquid water can be transformed into a gas, steam, and it also can be changed into a solid, ice. Furthermore, water comes from the air in the form of rain and returns back to the air as mist. When water evaporates from a dish, it leaves sediments, apparently turning into earth. While digging down into the earth will yield to us water, also living in Miletus and being surrounded by water may have made it seem probable to Thales that everything comes from water. Anaximander. Anaximander was another Greek philosopher who is generally considered by many to be a disciple of Thales. He flourished between 610 to 545 BC, and like Thales, lived in Miletus. Just like Thales, he wanted to answer the question concerning the ultimate source of all things that exist. However, Anaximander concluded that the stuff of which all things were made wasn't water as Thales made us to believe. Since he disagreed with Thales on the ultimate source of all things, he attempted to provide an explanation on the nature of the primary elements from which all things were made by asking the question, what is the cause of all things? According to him, all things arise out of a substance he referred to as the apeiron. He believes apeiron is the cause of all things, and it is boundless, unlimited, eternal, and indestructible, infinite, and ageless. He considers the apeiron as the reservoir of properties, which all things arise and return according to the law of natural justice. In other words, Anaximander was of the opinion that the ultimate reality must be an internal, imperishable source from which all things are made and to which all things return. Anaximander was full of scientific curiosity and was known to have said that the sun is as large as the earth. In this regard, he was the first to introduce the ginormous sundial, an instrument that shows the time of day by the shadow of a pointer on a cylindrical surface in Greece. He is also believed to be the first to draw a map of the world. Anaximander's disagreements with Thales. According to Anaximander, it is mistaken to agree with Thales and say that the ultimate source of all things is water. He explained the error in Thales' position by asking the question, if the earth rests on water as Thales made us to believe, what did the water rest on? From this explanation, we can also say that Anaximander was the first philosopher to criticize another philosopher. His disagreement with Thales is further made clear by the fact that Anaximander qualified the source of all things as boundless, limitless, imperishable, infinite, eternal, and ageless, because he believed that water is just another particular thing or element that we find in the whole world, along with earth, air, and fire. His argument is simply that if any of the known elements like water, air, fire, earth were to be the primal substance of which all things were made, then it would have been absorbed and conquered the other known elements. For instance, if water were to be the primal substance as Thales argued, then there would never be heat or fire, because water destroys rather than generate fire. This is to say that Anaximander held the opinion that the primal substance out of which everything else, in all its variety, is made should be something that is imperishable. Anaximenes. Anaximenes was the last of the Milesian philosophers and probably a pupil of Anaximander. His date of birth is uncertain, but he flourished around 494 BC. Like Thales and Anaximander, Anaximenes was concerned primarily with the basic substance that could serve the foundation of all things or reality. though he agreed with Anaximander that the basic substances or reality must be internal. Anaximenes believed that Anaximander's answer to the question of the ultimate source of all things was inadequate. He believed that Anaximander's answer or position is vague and looked for a more convincing answer to the question. For Anaximenes, the primary substance from which all things were made is air, affirming that all things evolve from air and return to it. According to Anaximenes, air is internal, infinite, and mobile. Several observations could have motivated Anaximenes to argue that air is the basic reality or the ultimate source of all things. For instance, air is much more pervasive than water. Air is central to all nature, since it is necessary for the existence of fire and can be found in water and in the earth. Anaximenes probably observed also that water falls when not supported, while air is self-supporting. This answers why he rejected Thales' claim that water is the basic reality. According to him, water cannot support the air because it cannot support itself. Only air can support itself and can conceivably support the heavenly bodies as well. In other words, when air concentrates, it first forms a cloud, then water, and lastly earth and rocks. When it rarefies, it turns into fire. Thus, Anaximenes originated the doctrine that the primary source, which is air, produces all other either by being rarefied into fire or condensed into wind, cloud, water, earth, and rock. Anaximenes further believed that the earth is shaped like a disc or a round table, and that air is the common medium of the endless worlds of the universe. Take a moment to reflect on what you've read so far. Based on your learning experience, and knowing that the first Greek philosopher postulated different substance as the primary stuff from which all things were made, note the name of each substance postulated by first Greek thinkers. Water, Thales; Apeiron, Anaximander; air, Anaximenes. The history of philosophy, especially in the Western tradition, is often traced to the life and times of the first Greek philosophers. However, it is important to note that 1. Curiosity was what propelled the first Greek philosophers to discover the primary substance from which all things were made. 2. The first Greek philosopher did not agree on what the primary substance is. Study section summary. In section 1, you've learned that the first Greek philosophers are also known as the Marcians. The basic concern of the first Greek philosopher was to describe the primary substance from which all things were made. Thales concluded that water is the primary substance from which all things were made. Anaximander is of the view that it is Apeiron, while Anaximenes affirms that air is the basic constituent of reality. The three philosophers differed on the details concerning the origin of all things. End of study section 1. Thanks for listening.